I would like to welcome Francis Nwokedi, the Managing Director and the Chief Executive Officer of NPA Advisors. Francis has 25 years experience as a finance lawyer and a specialist in debt capital markets, securitization, structured finance and project finance. He's the former head of banking and finance at the London office of Canadian law firm Haskin Martineau, and previously held in-house counsel position as an investment banker in major international financial institutions, including the Bank of Tokyo, Mitsubishi, Morgan Chase Bank, and Unicredit Bank. Welcome, Francis.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very, very kind. And in fact, it gives my age away because that's about 5 years old. So, for the sake of full disclosure, I should actually say, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm also a partner and I head up the structured finance and Africa practices of McCarthy Dennings, which is a UK law firm. But I am wearing my hat as a financial advisor, as the managing director and CEO of NPL Advisors for this afternoon's talk. Now, I was asked and tasked to basically put this seminar in context. So pardon me if it's going to sound a bit simplistic, but I'm going to do essentially three things. Explain what is PPP, because there's some of those who have just joined who may not be familiar with the term. I shall then give an example, a working example of one which we're actually currently engaged in Sub-Saharan Africa and in Nigeria in particular. I will then explain a little bit about the stakeholders who are involved, and that would hopefully be done to show the challenges which we've seen so far in the light of COVID. I will then conclude with some comments and as to how to actually make a PPP successful under these challenging times. So without further ado, what is PPP? PPP, Public-Private Partnership, or P3 or 3P, depending on what jurisdiction you are from. If you're from the UK, you say PPP. The Canadians, I know, say P3. Nigeria, we say all of them. It's really, as the name suggests, it's an alliance, a venture between the public sector, usually a government-regulated body, and the private sector, where a project sponsor aligns or gets the public sector to invest in a particular infrastructure project which is being done. Now, these tend to be large infrastructure projects, and they tend to be in the sectors such as aircraft, transportation, shipping, where you need relatively large amounts of money, and you need the government to commit in some way, shape, or form into the venture. Now, let's take an example. We were mandated last year by a consortium of American and Nigerian project sponsors to find a financing for the rolling out of an MRO facility in Nigeria. Now, for those of you who do not know what an MRO stands for, it means maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Now, what that is you may have been taking off from, I don't know, Heathrow Airport, or indeed any other international airport, and you see quite a huge building where planes actually are parked. What that is a maintenance and repair overhaul facility. And what happens there is basically that aircraft are maintained, repaired, and in some cases are overhauled. Now, in the case of Africa, there's only one, which is in Addis Ababa, in Ethiopia. So bringing this out in Nigeria will not only be such a significant thing for the Nigerian context, but indeed it will be a groundbreaker for the whole of Africa, because it would mean that we'll be depriving or we'll be shifting some of the flows which are currently done in Addis Ababa, in the United Kingdom and United States, where aircraft are flown to maintain and repair their aircraft into Nigeria. This is quite a big thing. Now, we were mandated in the autumn of last year, and we were meant to start constructing. In fact, we were meant to complete the construction of the facility in September. It's now August, and obviously we have not done so. What have we actually done to date? We signed the Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, between the stakeholders. And again, this shows the parties who are typically engaged in a PPP. The stakeholders being the aviation company, or the aviation side of the government, the aviation wing of the government, the company which is in charge of the aviation in a particular state in Nigeria. They're responsible. They actually participated in it. And also there was a project sponsors as well. There are also other third-party service providers, such as lawyers, accountants, and technicians, who are also obviously involved in giving the various technical reports, the legal reports, which are also required, present at the signing of the MOU. It was duly signed in September, and as I said, building was meant to have commenced and indeed be completed by this September. Now, what we have found so far is that the intervention of COVID put a huge spanner on that. From little things such as meetings, the minister couldn't actually get in time because there was lockdown. So none of the meetings which were scheduled to occur took place. The ramifications of that is that without the meetings having occurred, you can actually have the next stage, which are the contracts being signed, which is we need the next stage, which is the technicians being actually brought in to actually construct the site itself. Has this meant that the project is dead? No, it hasn't. What we have managed to do under these circumstances is to literally try and work within the ambit of what we have found, so that in the case of the minister being unable to actually execute the necessary agreement, this had to be done online. But it took time, and that's the thing, it took time to actually get that in place so that the minister could actually sign that on time. Don't forget, as the COVID occurred and the lockdown phase came, we had to put in place safe means of working that enabled, in this particular case, the minister to be able to sign the document electronically. All of that was not done, all of that infrastructure, soft infrastructure, had not been put in place. So such a small thing as setting up meetings to the financing. We then come to the investors. The investors who are largely DFIs, who had nodded very, very beautifully nodded, said, we know this particular transaction, we know this particular region in Nigeria, we know this state, we know this hangar. We think it's an excellent idea, not only because it will bring fresh money into Nigeria, not only because it will actually mean that Nigeria is a game changer in the aviation industry globally, but more importantly, of money moving forward. Because think about it, once the hangar has been built, it means that quite a lot of other aircraft will be coming into the region, which means that you need added facilities for the expanding business. So it meant more development of housing to house personnel and staff who are coming in, which would mean more infrastructure, road infrastructure being built, which would then mean more inflows of foreign investment. So it was a win-win scenario. But suddenly, 6 months down the line, we had this same DFI who had been smiling to me and smiling at us and signing it off, saying, well, things have changed. There's COVID. We do not know with some reason. I mean, they say, well, How do we know that all these planes are coming? Can't you see, Francis, there's nobody flying? And with justification. What do you say to that? However, the thing to say to that is that not to say, no, there's not going to be any more flights, but let us see how things are going to be planning out. It is not going to be the case that there will never be any more flights, but it will have to be done in a safe way. And fortuitously, as things will be seen now, especially in Europe, where there's an easing of traveling regulation, we have found that there's now there's more willingness to actually look at this, at fares be made, and be made from traveling. And there's some comfort in investing in the aviation industry. Now, that trickles down into the information package and the financial models which had been done right from the outset. We had actually carried out some projections and stress tested them as well, on the viability of various aircraft using the MRO facility in southern Nigeria as a test case. And we have found that in our stress test, we actually saw that even to the extent, even if there were about 3 or 4 airlines flying into Nigeria, that would be sufficient to actually pay for what we're asking for. We never envisioned that COVID will be a situation where there's absolutely no traveling at all. So that was a groundbreaker for us. But what we've had to do is we've had to go back to our financial models and tweak them to the extent in which saying, well, okay, we know that COVID is now happening. We know that there's currently a ban. How long is there going to be a ban for? How long is it going to take for domestic flights to start? How long for international flights to start? And then how long will it take for airlines to start flying into Lagos? And revisit our model. That then leads to pricing. And we had to be very, very realistic in pricing as well. Because obviously pre-COVID, we have been very, very optimistic because we just basically looked around the world and said, there is an MRO facility, this is how much they're getting, this is how much Addis Ababa is getting, this is how much Heathrow Airport is getting, this is how much JFK is getting, this is how much India is getting. We believe that we can actually do X, Y, Z. But with JFK and every else getting 0, 0, 0, it becomes very difficult to actually predict what you have to do. But that exercise has to be carried out. And that then gets reflected in the pricing as well. So the pricing has obviously been at an upward trend. So we're not going to be getting the same competitive pricing which we had pre-COVID. Now, I'm just conscious of time. I think I have about 2 or 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
I was asked to say, well, a few words about what will make it more successful to actually close a PPP under these scenarios.
Yeah.
On what we have learned on so far and our experience in doing, again, this is just one simple PPP which I've talked to you about. We're engaged in 6. Number of things which I hope my colleagues will pick up, in particular Chibi will pick up when they actually do their own talk. I think it's important that the information package which any project sponsor prepares, and don't forget the information package comprises of the information memorandum, well, a teaser right from the outset, a teaser of a project with a PPP. The information memorandum and the financial model must be of excellent international standards. You can't afford to fluffle on that. You've got to have accurate information. You've got to have accurate financial models. You've got to stress test your financial models. Because what we're finding now is that investors are basically looking at your financials and basically saying, how has COVID impacted on this? We want their half-year financial statements, which shows what has happened in the event of COVID. How has this impacted on their balance sheet? How has this impacted on their cash flow projections? Without knowing this, I'm not going to give them 1 kobo. That's extremely important. The other thing which I think is also important to realize, and this is where government and Chidi in particular, and those around, in government should bear in mind, is, and especially in the case of Nigeria, where we have the indigenous law of 60-40%, given the high pricing and given the fact that it's very, very difficult to find investors to invest in Nigeria, invest indeed to part with their money under this COVID scenarios, is it really realistic to expect somebody who is willing to invest 90% or sometimes 95% of the debt element to only have 40% return? I think that the government should actually be a bit more realistic and pragmatic in this sort of this local context issue, and should be prepared to actually should be ready to move from 60-40 to perhaps 70-30, 60, 50-50. But we have a foreign investor who is willing to invest up to 90%, 95% of a project. It seems to me under these present circumstances, where it's so challenging to have an investor to part with their money, it is unrealistic to expect 40% return. And lastly, when it comes to closing these days are very, very different from what we experienced in pre-COVID. Nobody wants to come and shake your hands. I don't want to shake anybody's hand, and that is a blessing and a curse. It is a blessing in the sense that it focuses the mind now on electronic closings, so that money moves much more quickly and much more efficiently, and we spend less time in all the fluffle of meeting with a closing sort of meeting, which we're used to, which again is to a certain extent a waste of money. And investors are looking at it and saying, well, hang on a minute, do I really need to actually go out to a closing ceremony? So without further ado, those are the three things which I think are important. Again, information, clear, precise information package from project sponsors. Secondly, a more realistic approach as to risk and reward, especially on the side of the government. And thirdly, a more focused attitude towards closing, a more focused and tight attitude towards closing a particular transaction. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. That was great. Francis talked about a lot of things. He talked about pre-COVID and during this COVID and after COVID. And three things that he said is that we need to be clear in terms of the information that we put out, that you've got to stress test your financial models so that you can adjust whatever the situation, particularly now. And also he said that it's unrealistic in terms of what to expect when investors are ready to put in 90 or 95% of the investment. That is a challenge for you, Chidi, when it comes to government regulations. And also in terms of that there's a need for more focus and time. That times are different now. We need to make our projects lean and agile. And COVID, it's a kind of gift. What you would have done before, traveling and wasting money, you can do it more effectively, even virtually. So there are so many things for us to look at and think about.